Hello. Welcome today to our Yoga for the Creative Soul gathering. This day has brought us reflections off camera. We meet every Wednesday at 12:30 and spend a little time reflecting with one another. The topic today is Brahmacharya, the restraint of energy, not leaking energy. We'll talk about that. But during our interpersonal reflection, there were lots of thoughts about boundaries, which is really on point with today's lessons. How do we cope when loved ones are not okay, when we're not okay? Where's the line? How do we know? I shared a little bit of my affirmation that I've been working on for several years, which is don't help, stop helping. And if you've done a certain kind of personal growth work, you know that isn't about shutting down or being miserly with resources. That is about making sure that we're okay first, and then tending to our loved ones in an appropriate but not codependent or controlling way. Likewise, responsibilities, career, and community at large, be that local community, your block, or the world itself. We can define community differently. And all the while managing our life force energy. Before we get rolling, I want to honor where these ideas are coming from. Yoga and the Yoga Sutras specifically, as we play through chapter 7 in Yoga for the Creative Soul, we're exploring the path of Raja Yoga, spoken of in many ancient works, and is based where we're working primarily on chapter 2 of 4 in the Yoga Sutras. Yoga, a 5,000-year-old tradition originating in India, and began very much as an oral tradition, just for initiates, for the monks, for the sages. We're lucky, we're blessed to have access to these practices and information, and we're able to explore these ideas, live, work, convene, create on these lands that came to us through treaty, through theft, through colonization, through occupation. And we honor the original caregivers of these lands, and we continue to commit ourselves to offering support and assistance in whatever way possible to the recovery of the damage of genocide and colonization, as well as to support the endeavors of the caregivers of our lands, airs, and waterways, supporting our Native and Aboriginal communities as they work very hard to protect us, our health, and Mother Earth, as they have done tirelessly for generations. Yes, and so even that's an example of where to spend our energy and how to help, right? That in service to truth, in service to justice, if we see opportunity to meet a need, that is worthy dedication of our resources. And the trick is, in order to be wholly available to offer resources, we need to not be a leaky bucket. It's important that we're checking in with ourselves. How's my stamina today? How's my energy? How is my physical health, energetic health, mental, emotional, psychological health, spiritual health? And in what ways do I have the gifts and resources to support the endeavors going on around me? And it is a delicate balance, and it changes day by day, hour by hour. And today we're talking about that continence, that mindful awareness of energy. And actually, before we get into the education part of this, We're going to go right into expression, and then we'll continue to layer on this first expression that you create. So if you want to stand up to do the centering, I invite you to do that. Wherever you are in your seat, you can give yourself just a little movement to free yourself up, especially if you've been stationary for a little while. We want to keep the blood flowing to the muscles, to the organs, including the brain. Thank you, brain, for all that you do. And once you have freed up your mobility a bit more, can you feel the difference, even from these few movements, of a sense of that energy, of vitality in your body? Some people might say lightness, warmth, tingling. The breath might deepen just by the nature of having done some movements. Check in with what is that? What is that like to get that life force flowing a bit more? And then settle into it. Life force in yoga, prana, is often spoken of as being the same as breath. It's carried on the breath, right? The breath is a vitalizing force. That as you settle into your body, as it is now, just let that breath flow. Let that breath flow. And notice the way the breath itself has an intelligence, has a way that it wants to proceed, filling the lungs, to the heart, through the body, back again, out. And you can increase the benefit of the breath by acknowledging what you are bringing in today. Is that centeredness? Is that calm? Is that health, vitality? Breathing it in and letting it distribute through your physical self. Perhaps filling you so much that it shines into the space around your body. So the qualities that you are breathing flow through you and create an environment around you. And that's our first expressive practice. Take to your tools, whatever they may be today, musical, written, imagery, and depict this somehow. Depict yourself as you are today. This can be symbolic. It doesn't have to be an actual self-portrait. Depict yourself as you are today, filled with that prana, that life force, flowing, perhaps surrounding you. And not spending too much time on this, or I guess more accurately, let me say that as we continue to go through the educational piece today, sharing ideas, reflecting upon these yogic concepts, this path of Raja Yoga, I'd ask that you continue to let what you're learning or thinking of interface with your expression. Add to it, alter it, play with it, let it take shape. Currently, we are depicting ourselves filled with, flowing, that life force, prana. And as you are creating, notice what's happening with your breath, with that sense of vitality. No need to change anything, just observing. The beauty of one of the many beauties of expressive arts is that we're okay with what comes out of us. We're not attached to the finished product. We'll talk about this more next week as we think about concepts like non-stealing and truthfulness. The way we express is the way we express, and what that end product is, that's not the point. So stay with yourself as you are expressing this and notice, how does it feel? How does it feel to move the implement across the page or your body through space and time? How does it feel to make the sounds, write the descriptions or dialogue? What's happening in your body? What other thoughts, feelings, ideas flow with it? And what we know about creative endeavors and expressive arts for our mental health is that they will often bypass verbal blocks that we may have and allow us to come more deeply into a personal truth, something perhaps ineffable, something that language, it can't describe or process. And the act of creative work, of expressive arts, gives us the healing of the processing in a place that is a bit less linear, a bit less concrete, and yet so impactful, because that is where many of our traumas live, is in the somatics, in the energy, in the beliefs beyond language, felt experiences. If you're doing something beautiful for your mental health, even right now, even if it's just scribbles, finger paints, holding a shape of yourself in space, this is something. So we'll move on to the teaching, but nice to share. Speaking of, the works look the way they look or don't. That's me in green, in purple. Today I decided to depict the pranayama as going in through the chakras and flowing through my body is that orange light, and then around my body, really hard to see, but there's some yellow all around. As well, the layers, chapter 4 of the sutras will teach us more about the layers of consciousness. Yoga is not about becoming a perfect person, a robot, or a saint. Yoga is about supporting ourselves and understanding the truth of reality. Vidya, insight, understanding, awareness. And so, as we go forward here, let us think about this concept of Brahmacharya. So last week we talked about the don'ts and do's of yoga, so to speak, the first two limbs of the Eightfold Path described in chapter 2, which are the restraints of harm and the cultivation of health, purity, alignment. We'll talk more about those cultivations next month. And for now, we're thinking about that restraint, that yama of Brahmacharya. So in order to understand Brahmacharya, we want to think about that vitalizing force, prana, as already described. The prana is it's an animating force. It flows through all life. If you wanted to do a deep dive, you could start to find parallels between prana and some of the quantum explanations of reality. We've spoken in past Yoga for the Creative Soul groups about the layers of being, koshas. And we're of 5 layers: body, breath, energy, mind, discernment, and spirit. So this prana maya kosha, this vital energy layer, in the Upanishads, they talk about this as being between the physical self and the mental self. And so it is to say, as we manage the vital force, the easiest way to do that is through the breath, then that helps manage the monkey mind, the busyness, the emotions, and also keep health and vitality in the body. These are the closest connections. What you do on any layer ripples through all the layers, yes, and yet there's that close relationship, body, energy, state of mind. Brahmacharya, the restraint of energetic resources, is sometimes translated as continence, even as celibacy. And what we see is that the literal translation is student or follower. One who hitches one's wagon to, I think, is the closest translation. But yoking to divine consciousness, Brahman, as it's known in Indian traditions. So what we're doing is we're dedicating this life force. And by the way, while you're hearing me talk about this, how is that impacting your drawing or the dance you were doing or the dialogue that you were writing? Let these ideas blend. Continue to play with creative expression while we're talking about this. But this idea of Brahmacharya, or being a follower of divine consciousness, a student of divine consciousness, means that we are dedicating our vital force, our energetic resources to the highest. And so this wound up being celibacy because in many traditions, remember, yoga was originally for the dedicated sages. To be sexual is to take the most powerful force in the physical realm and offer it to the material rather than to the divine. So we want to be offering our most sacred aspects of our being to the sacred, is the idea here. And there's a lot more that could be said about yogic sexuality. Certainly, if you're interested in that, reach out to me for a one-on-one consultation. I'm happy to support your journey in that way, but it's outside the scope of what we're talking about today. So we'll call it what it is, dedicating energy to the highest, and then reflecting, okay, in what ways might I be leaking energy? In what ways might I not be practicing this energetic continence? And inappropriate boundaries, like we were talking about before, overthinking about problems that we can't solve, being promiscuous, whether that's sexually promiscuous or watching too much Netflix or eating inappropriate foods, or I mean, the list goes on, doesn't it? But there are ways that we leak energy, ways that we waste our vitality and cause ourselves harm, not because we're bad people, but human beings and monkey minds, and this is what we do. And that's why yoga is like, hey, there's alternatives, give it a little attention. And we tend to experience our energetic resources as being limited. And so I'm just giving a nod as we go on through the later chapters of yoga, as we've practiced yama, niyama, and these other 8 limbs of Raja Yoga over time. It changes our interface with reality. We talked about this a couple weeks ago, talking about the matrix and other pop culture concepts and ways of teaching this. But as we realize more and more truth in consciousness, we have a different relationship with the animating force. We have greater access to deeper reserves of prana. We are less likely to fatigue in the same ways as when we are more driven by the monkey mind and more disrupted forms of consciousness, right? Yoga Sutra, chapter 1, sutra 2, like the first thing they teach, yoga is the stilling of the waves of the mind, loosely translated. Stiller the mind, more access to energy. So again, it's not about becoming a robot or a saint. It is about deeper and deeper understanding, greater and greater access to subtler and subtler layers of truth. Subtler and subtler layers of truth, what? How does that get depicted in your expressive endeavor, I wonder? Now, while I'm talking about this, it would be natural for you to be checking yourself. Yeah, where could my boundaries use a little more fortification? In what ways am I perhaps leaking energy? And I'm wondering, sorry for going out of frame for a second there. I'm wondering how you are depicting those leaks, that incontinence, so to speak, energetically speaking. And if you hadn't had the chance to depict some of that while I was talking, just let yourself play. You can use a new image, but it's kind of fun to look at that baseline of where it was working for us and then add to it. How does it get away from us also? And I know for myself, it'll go away in little droplets of grief, right? Little teardrops. I'll lose energy on I'll lose energy on getting mad about stuff. I'll definitely, oh monkey mind, definitely lose energy from overthinking. And a point that's made in Yoga for the Creative Soul that I wish for you to keep with you is that idea that as we judge ourselves, that narrative inside, worry and doubt creates holes in the bucket. That kind of lack of self-trust and harshness in the inner realm do not allow us to be continent. A harmful inner environment robs us of energy. The harm might not land. I'm speaking in the language of yamas, right? Ahimsa, harm, versus ahimsa, non-harm, non-violence. But even though they're like, oh, why did I do that? I'm so frustrated with this. And in the idea of our expressive activities, if we are harsh, it shuts down the creative soul. It does not allow us the freedom and safety of exploration because we know we're going to face that naysayer, the critic, the meanness, the heaviness inside of us, where prana, like you noticed after your movements today, is much more often experienced as a lightness. And, asterisk for those who tend to be very, very ungrounded. Sometimes your prana will feel heavy, but in this nice, safe, grounding way, like a heavy blanket or putting pillows on yourself for proprioception, or letting your pet or loved one put a little pressure on the body. It's not always lightness, just to say. I wanted to share this idea with you directly off of page 96, which is where we've taken the lesson from today, from ideas shared on page 96 of Yoga for the Creative Soul. This thought that when we consciously choose where to dedicate our energetic resources, not only do we not waste those energetic resources on stress or on overwhelm, but we are also able to meet it out appropriately. So we're checking, is this okay? Do I have the vitality for this? Where do I want to offer my energetic resources? And it's true that sometimes we get so depleted, we can't keep up with the leaky bucket, right? We can't fill ourselves faster than the leak is letting things out. And if that's something that might be going on for you, then support is recommended. Reaching out to your buddies, your yoga community, come to these gatherings, reach out to me one-on-one, go back to your old therapist that you used to like, zoom into your spiritual gatherings, church, temple, whatever it may be. when things are running out faster than they're coming in, it is a very important opportunity to be responsive and prioritize ways of filling ourselves back up. So what we do next in the process of the gathering is we go back to individual. For those of you watching the recording, playing along at home, I thank you so much for your attention. Reach out to me with feedback, requests, questions, if you want to know more. For yoga therapy for first responders or people loving or living with trauma, the next training is at the end of February. It's going to be a hybrid, so all things being equal, it will be live about 40 minutes outside of Buffalo, New York on the Canada side, Niagara Falls, and it will also be available online, so you can participate from anywhere in the world and get a trauma-aware certificate. Sometimes just for a different set of eyes, a different look at things, if there's anybody who is here live that wants to share with our buddies at a distance, our future participants, the floor is open.
Nice. Okay, so when I was doing the movement with the breath and the pranayama, I felt, some tight spots in my body. And so I imagined the pranayama going into those tight spaces and creating space in the physical body. And so then I thought of this oil can, like the prana was kind of like a oil can for the body and also for the mind to get it flowing without having getting clogged up too much. And then for leaking the energy, I drew this question mark because for me, the leaking energy is about the unknown, whether it's doubting, self-doubt, or what lies ahead in the future, certain expectations, etc. And that was it. It was a lovely practice. Thank you, Erin.
Oh, thanks, Karen. And fun for everybody to see just how different the same ideas can come through. Because on this end, it is an intention to limit self-judgment and criticism as much as possible. There's no right or wrong way to express this stuff, but the expression itself is what's important. So thanks to everybody who played along. I look forward to seeing, oh, just because your camera's back on, did you want to go, Kate?
Yeah, I just wanted to share mine. So I just, it's hard to see because there's a lot of wording, but I really made a lot of squares about ways that my energy leaks out and is wasted. And then on this side, I just started making different tools that I can start to bring in and that I use to help me to bring that, to bring my energy, keep my energy where it belongs. And today I realized, and I probably realized this before, that the greatest self-care I can give myself is to hold my space for myself at all times. And I forget it, and I move out, and I'm being defensive, and I'm falling into someone else trying to, take my energy or trying to get me upset or whatever is happening. But me holding space, just coming back to myself each time, is the biggest self-care for me right now. And I'm going to be practicing that a lot because it's beautiful. So yeah, the trees today, they told me, they said, listen, girl, you need to root, always root, always root. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Rootedness. Getting the ups from the team. Yes. And hey, George.
Just quickly, as we were doing the breathing, I just felt myself getting really full and just full in the upper body. And I also felt like I was going into the ground, like I was sinking and sinking into the ground. And as far as leaking, I'm going to take note of kind of that leaking the heart. And I always tell myself that I'm here to hold hope and not try to not try to fix. No, I'll just hold some hope for this little girl. I will hold some hope.
Yeah, as will we. As will we. Yeah. Thank you. Nice. So we've been rolling. Thank you for sharing with all. We benefit so much from each other's messages. So thank you for that. We'll close out the recording and give the rest of anybody who wants a chance to share that chance. Those of you watching future selves, thank you. Thank you so much. And post to the group, let each other know how you're doing, seek support, offer love. And I look forward to seeing you next Wednesday at 12:30.